Wednesday. I am painting my nails. Essie's Willow in the Wind. And we are going to talk about A Court of Thorns and Roses. Yes, I am in my pajamas. No, I'm not going to change. I've discovered that if I add too many steps to filming, then I just never film. And then I don't actually share my opinions about these books. And then you don't get to hear me bitch about these books. So, A Court of Thorns and Roses. I read A Court of Thorns and Roses knowing that it probably wasn't going to be my favorite book. This isn't to say that it can't be other people's favorite books, just that this isn't usually my cup of tea. But mainly I wanted to read it because everyone was hyping it up, and I was like, who knows? Like, maybe I will like it. Maybe it is spectacular, and I'm just wrong. Like, maybe it's completely out of my normal high fantasy comfort zone, and it's worth it. So I wanted to give it a try. Do I think that it was worth it? Personally, no. I rated it a 1 star. If you don't want to hear a 1-star review of ACOTAR, then you should probably just come out now, because that's what this is going to be. So mainly I rated it a 1 star because I thought that up until the last 50% of the book, literally nothing was happening. Like, there was literally no stakes whatsoever. I believe this book is meant to be a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. When I say a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, I do not mean the original fairy tale written in the 1800s or something. I mean the Disney version of Beauty and the Beast, which in and of itself is something that kind of consistently annoys me. The retellings of not the original fairy tale mythos, but in fact the retellings of the Disney films. I just feel like people haven't done their research on things. I don't know. I love the Disney films. I'm not saying that, but also they're retelling a child's watered down retelling of a fairy tale that's pretty dope most of the time. So it's always just kind of you didn't even Google the history of Beauty and the Beast. Okay. So, it's the Disney version of Beauty and the Beast. Her main character, Feyre, kills a wolf, which turns out to be a fairy. And in recompense, she has to spend her life in fairy to kind of accommodate for the life that she took away. This seems fine. She's kind of she absolutely agrees to this. They're you're not gonna die, we'll just send you to fairy, it's gonna be fine. She's fine, as long as my family's okay, that's cool by me. She agrees to this. It turns out that her imprisonment is going to be exceptionally luxurious. She's living in a palace, she gets nice clothes, she doesn't have to do any work, she can just focus on her art. It's significantly better than the sort of impoverished life she was living beforehand. She's not expected to take care of her whole fucking family. This is a good deal. Better than she expected. And for the whole 50% of the book, she is complaining, and she's not even complaining. She's trying to find. She keeps asking if there's a way that she can leave and go back to her family, which I think is kind of funny because she hates her family, but I get it. Trying to leave and go back to her family, and every single time someone just tells her no, and that's where that plot thread ends. She never really creates a solid plan for escape, if that's what she wants to do. Literally, she just kind of comes up with, she has the first half of the book it feels like a bunch of weird vignettes that are absolutely useless. She interacts with some sort of fairy thing. She's can't I just go home? And someone tells her no, and then that's the end of the vignette. And it happens for 200 pages. And so for the first half of the book, I'm what the fuck? What the fuck is happening? What does any of this matter? And looking back at the book as a whole, I think the main issue was that the foreshadowing was so subtle that it was non-existent. Like, there was no drive for mystery as to why certain things were happening, like why she was being held in a palace but being treated properly, like why the spring court behaved the way that they did and wore masks and like all the shit. Like, there was no like question from Feyre about these things. So it was really leaning on the reader to notice that these things were weird, because Feyre wasn't noticing that these things were weird. Feyre was too focused on getting out that she didn't really give a fuck why things were behaving weird. Like, like her argument was just like, oh, well, I'm in fairies, so like, yeah. And it's like, okay, well, you're supposed to be there for the rest of your life, so like maybe have like a little bit more drive, madam. So you got these three people. There's Feyre, and then there's Lucian, and there's Tamlin. And these are mainly the three characters that we follow during this first half of the book. There's also like Alice, who's the maid to Feyre, who I actually really liked. But mainly you're following these three people. And the problem with these three people is that there is a setup for a romance. However, a romance usually works best when the characters actually have characteristics. So, like, I wouldn't even call Feyre, Lucian, and Tamlin flat characters, because that would imply that they had characteristics, period. Like, I don't think I've read a book in my recent history that has so little to the characters at all. Like, they're like blow up dolls. Like, they are literally like just going through the plot points of a story. Like, Feyre's main character trait is that she's not like other girls because she likes to wear pants. Like, literally, that's it. She has no, like, thought process to try to get out of her situation. She has very little thoughts, period. Like, it's weird. She just kind of, like, exists in fairy and has no real drive to do anything. Like, the plot implies, like, her words imply that she has a drive to leave fairy, and then she just literally never does anything with that drive, which implies that it's not true. So Tamlin and Lucian are pretty interchangeable. Like, literally, like, I can't even, like, Lucian has, I guess, like, a sense of humor, whereas Tamlin really doesn't have anything. I mean, Tamlin, like, straight up is like, if he were a spice, he'd be flour. Like, he's like a cottage cheese man. Like, he probably eats plain oatmeal for breakfast. Like, there is nothing in him that makes me feel like he's a human being. I know he's a fairy, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, he's like a person, like a real person, rather than just like a blow up doll man that, like, sits in chairs. Like, there's nothing to him at all to fall in love with, for Feyre to fall in love with. Like, it doesn't make any fucking sense. So in the second half of the book, when he gets captured by Amarantha and freaking tells freaking Feyre to go home, and okay, like, he tells Feyre to go home, and Feyre is upset about it because they boned the night previous. However, she spent the whole half of the book literally trying as best as she fucking could to get home in the first place. So she finally gets what she wants, and then all of a sudden she's like, but I'm in love with Tamlin. And it's like, I'm not really sure how, because he straight up has no personality. Straight up has no personality. Also, he captured you, which is kind of a bad display of affection. Like, a bad start to the romance is getting captured by your romantic lead. But, like, I get it. This is, you know, this is meant to be steamy. I didn't think that it was steamy, but it's meant to be something. So she's upset now that she gets to come home. And she spends, like, a scene home, and, you know, she's happy that everyone's good, and her sister, she has a beautiful conversation with her sister Nesta, who, once again, Nesta's one of the three characters who I think has a personality. It's really Nesta, Alice, and Rhysand, which I know it's like a horrible combination of characters, sans Alice. But like, that's it. Like, they're the only ones who have a personality that I could point to and be like, oh yes, that's them. Everyone else really fucking really just plot pointed. I cannot indicate who they fucking are. So she goes back to the fairy court. Alice tells her that the house was cursed by Amarantha, and he had to fall in love with somebody, like with a mortal who hated fairies, and that would like break his curse. And he does that, but then like Feyre didn't actually say that she loves him, so then he failed, and now Amarantha wants to bone him. That's the thing. Like, Amarantha set this curse on him because she wanted to bone him, and he said no. And so that's where the curse originated. So now Feyre is going into the fairy court to save a man who has no personality, who she loves, but I'm not sure why, because there's literally nothing in the whole first fucking half of the book, literally nothing to indicate that they love each other. Like, there's enough to indicate that they're sexually attracted to each other, and that's fucking it. So it's like, okay, like, she's like, I love him, and it's like, bitch, where? Like, give me one personality trait that you love about this man, because he doesn't have one, and then I'll believe you, but I don't. Like, the book did not make me believe that they loved each other, period. It's fucking ridiculous. So she does these 3 tasks, and the 3 tasks are like really difficult, kind of like classic like fairy challenges. And this could be fine, except that Amarantha decides. Now, Amarantha holds all the cards. Like, she's the big bad, she's the queen of all of fairy, and she decides that Feyre can have a way out of the 3 tasks. She can literally answer one really stupid riddle, and then she can be free if she fails the tasks. Now, like, literally, Amarantha could have just killed this bitch, but instead she decided to give her 2 options to live. That seems fucking ridiculous. Like, so like, sitting there, like, she's telling you about the riddle, and you fucking know that the riddle is going to be answered. You fucking know that the next 150 pages of reading about these tasks is all going to be for fucking nothing, because she's just going to answer the riddle when she puts her freaking brain to it for, like, less than 2 seconds. Like, you fucking know. And that's exactly what happens. While on top of this, you have this weird, like, plot point of her flirting with Rhysand. So, like, this is where it really gets annoying, because, like, one, like, the whole first half of the book has not indicated that Feyre's in love with Tamlin. And then you have this, like steamy section and, like, flirting with Rhysand, who at this point is, like, a terrible person. Now, the argument is that he is currently, like, under the thrall of Amarantha. Like, he's essentially, like, Amarantha's bitch. And, like, I get that. That being said, though, he's still a horrible person. Like, he's still doing some really shitty shit, and I know that this is going to become a plot point in future books, which I don't think that I'll read, but I know that you don't have 4 books of her just living happily ever after with Tamlin. I understand that Rhysand's actually going to become an aspect of what is going to be a love triangle. I know this. I hate this, but I know this. But the whole idea of her falling in love with either of these men is so fucking ridiculous. It's annoying. Like, Rhysand, both of them have literally harmed her, like, have taken her away from her family, or have harmed her, have like, capitalized on her pain in Amarantha's court. Like, at this point, girl, it's like, just go home. Like, truly go home, because, like, at least fucking, like, you're in control of yourself. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, you're sitting there just like, honey, everyone here is horrible to you. So, like, why are you staying? So there are 3 tasks. And Rhysand pretty much helps her out. Did you just see my cat? Rhysand pretty much helps her out with, like, all but the first of these tasks. So the first task is she's like defeating this monster in like a little labyrinth, and the monster's blind. That's the trick. She discovers the monster is blind, and so she uses that to her advantage and kills the monster. Fantastic. The second task is that she and Lucian are trapped in like this room that has like, spikes coming down from the ceiling. They can't reach each other. There's a gap in the way. And there's a riddle. I don't even know if it's a riddle. We don't even get to see the words. There's a riddle on the wall that she has to answer. Like, she has to press a lever, one of 3, based on the riddle, which will raise the ceiling again. So the trick here is that she can't fucking read. And this is actually pretty sad. This is actually one of the, like, literal few times where Feyre and Tamlin, like, interact with each other in a way that I guess is supposed to be romantic. So Tamlin begins to teach Feyre how to read because he discovers that she never learned how. Once again, because she's impoverished. Kind of cute. Unfortunately, literally not expanded upon at all. Like, it's literally, once again, just a little vignette of him teaching her how to read, and she's like, wow, like, maybe he's not an absolute jerk. And it's like, honey, like, just because he does one nice thing for you does not make him a good person. But okay, so that happened. So in the second task, she cannot read the riddle, so she doesn't know which lever to pull. And Rhysand had given her, in the first task, she had injured her arm. And so he had healed her arm and given her like a cool tattoo to indicate that he was the one who healed her. And this tattoo essentially has sentience and actually essentially connects her psychically to Rhysand, which is the lack of permission, like the lack of consent in that is wretched. But glossing. So the tattoo has sentience. It directs her to the lever that she needs to pull. So Rhysand is aware that Feyre can't read. And this was actually one of the like cute scenes, one of the only cute scenes between Feyre and Tamlin was Tamlin finding out that she can't read and then being like, oh, well, let me teach you. And isn't this cute? This was one of the scenes where Feyre was like, oh, maybe he isn't so bad. And it's like, lady, he captured you and you're living in his fucking house, and just because he hasn't tortured you does not mean that this isn't a weird, dubious thing. But okay. So Rhysand's tattoo directs her. She doesn't complete the second task without it, which just kind of means that she cheated. I mean, I'm glad that she survived it, but I was just kind of like, really? Like, she, once again in the books, she was met with an obstacle and without exterior help just immediately would have failed. So it was kind of it was just okay, this woman is finding none of her own power at this point. She's good at what she's good at, and she's not going to try to find her own way out of things. You know what I mean? It's just the second task was frustrating. There's a couple days in between all of these tasks. There's a couple of days between events, which I also think is why is that? Except that it establishes a weird rapport between Rhysand and Feyre, because you know that this is a 4-book series and it's obviously going to be a love triangle, because I don't make the rules. So Rhysand dresses her up in essentially nothing and makes her drink this fairy wine, which means that she's essentially roofied. She cannot remember what she does during these parties with this fairy wine. And she wakes up and she's like, where am I? And she's covered in sweat and fluids and freaking in this slutty dress. And this happens every night, which is horrifying. And it's established as like horrifying, like it's meant to be horrifying for Tamlin, like it's meant to be like it's meant to instigate his possessive nature, but really this is just like date rape drugs. If Sarah J. Maas wants me to feel like there's a relationship brewing between Rhysand and Feyre, then she probably shouldn't have established him as being somebody willing to drug somebody at a party. Even for the sake of Queen Amarantha, I think that's pretty... It's just fucked up. And really, that's what she's leading on. This fact that, like, secretly he's a really good guy, but he is currently, you know, Amarantha's bitch. And it's like, you don't become Amarantha's bitch and then get to, like, just immediately swing into being a good guy. Like, you're Amarantha's bitch. Like, you chose to be Amarantha's bitch. So now everything that you do is still shitty. Like, that's the end. So the third task is Feyre is just going to straight up be asked to kill 3 fairies. Just, like, stab them. And the third person that she kills, because she does kill the first 2, turns out to be Tamlin. Which, to be fair, I was actually shocked by this. Well, I was like, whoa, that's cool. So it turns out that because Tamlin was cursed, one of his curses was to have a heart of stone, which means that Feyre can stab him and he doesn't actually die. Which, just one time, I really want... Like, they pulled the Hunger Games cheat. And just one time I really want somebody to just have to fucking kill their love interest. Like, just actually kill them dead. Like, I'm so tired. I'm so tired of the Hunger Games cheat. Like, I don't care. At this point, I do not care about Tamlin's life. I do not care about Feyre's life. Like, I was standing there and I was like, I know that he is not going to be killed here, but I really, really want him to die. I just really want that man to die. Like, just stab him in the fucking heart. Like, I don't give a single fuck. Like, Sarah J. Maas, you have not given me a reason at all to be upset if Tamlin gets stabbed. None whatsoever. So just fucking stab him. Just stab him. And then it'll prevent me from having to live with the fact that there's going to be a fucking love triangle between a woman and 2 people who definitely abuse the hell out of her. But, like... So she stabs him and he lives because he has a heart of rock. And then Amarantha pulls the, well, you know, I still get to mess with you because I didn't tell you when I would free you after you finish the trials, which I thought was stupid. And then she's expected to answer the riddle. If she answers the riddle, then they're free immediately. And she still is suffering. Like, she still can't figure out this riddle. And I need it to be established that I read that riddle one time and was like, if this motherfucker is love, like, if the answer to this shit is love, I'm going to just throw myself off of a building. Of course, the answer is love, which I think is so fucking dumb. She's the queen of fairies, and the answer to her riddle is love? That's stupid. Like, you could have chosen anything. You could have chosen literally anything. Any specific, like, fairy lore thing you could fucking think of, Amarantha, to make sure that she couldn't fucking get it, and you just didn't. And the fact, anyway, that she was given an out via a riddle is so fucking stupid. It's ridiculous. Like, it just got me. It just got me. The stupidity got me. So she figures out the riddle, but she's dying. And so she gets turned into a fairy, which I didn't really know could happen. But she gets turned into a fairy, and then they're expected, like, she and Tamlin are expected to live happily ever after. Although, at the end of the book, like, Rhysand has, like, a little conversation with her, and then the book ends. So I gave it a 1 star mainly because nothing, like, the first part of the book was a 0 stars because it was a waste of my time. And the second half of the book was a 1 star because I felt nothing except for the fact that Feyre needs to leave this horrible, abusive life that she is currently living. Like, that somehow Sarah J. Maas created a lifestyle that was worse than an abusive home life and poverty. She found it. She found a worse living situation for Feyre, and we're supposedly, as readers, supposed to root for that, when in fact I really struggle to root for two men who are both abusive in their own special way. I don't get it, and I think that the book was slow to boot. Now, I don't want people coming for me saying like that I didn't get it, because I did get it. I do get why people enjoy books like this. I do get why people enjoy paranormal romance. I was also a Twilight girly. I get it. That being said, just like Twilight is just problematic as fuck.